Hi, welcome to another episode of Meet the Author. Tonight we have Jan Mann. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Jan wrote 2 books about adventure and touring, one in Connecticut and one in the country out west. Her first book, Cruising Connecticut with a Picnic Basket. Let me read a little bit about it. Cruising Connecticut combines an eclectic selection of places to visit with the fine art of picnicking, from hunting spring flowers to wine tasting, from hiking and biking on miles of trails to tubing and kayaking on our waterways. From city walking tours to country drives, from old homesteads to unique museums, and who would think of picnicking in the middle of a shopping trip or at the theater? We're going to discuss this book first, but the other book she wrote is called How I Won the West, A Journey of Discovery. And both these books have to do with adventure and discovery. So Jan, before we talk about the actual picnicking book of Connecticut, tell me a little bit about why you decided to write what you call an adventure book, even though it's also a travel book.
Well, for Cruising Connecticut with a Picnic Basket, it started way back many, many years ago when I found a book in the library. It was entitled The Country's Most Beautiful Gardens. And I was flipping through this book and
who wrote that, the famous author?
I don't remember the author's name.
Okay.
I was flipping through and found a chapter called Garden in the Woods, located at the New England Wildflower Society in Framingham, Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, that's close. All the others were way in other parts of the country. So I got really, really excited about learning more about wildflowers. And that very spring, this was in the winter that I found this book, that very spring I went on a wildflower hunt and visited over 20 Connecticut state parks, preserves, and nature centers. And I kept a journal and had a wonderful time. And I never stopped going after that. After my wildflower season ended, I kept going looking for other neat places in Connecticut.
Well, I read that part, and I like the part you said about keeping a journal, because we call ourselves authors, and one of the things that an author does to be creative is they keep a journal. Mm-hmm. In other words, to keep track of your ideas and thoughts so that one day you may be able to put it into a book. So what gave you the idea to keep a journal?
Well, with the wildflowers, I just wanted to track how many I found and where I found them. And like I said, I went to 20 different places, and in some areas I found whatever, you could count on 2 hands. But in other places, I think my best park was 42 varieties of wildflowers.
Wow.
Of course, I brought a friend with me who had 3 wildflower identification books in her backpack, so she was a huge help. But
and did anybody else know that there were over 40 types of wildflowers at this park?
I don't think so.
Now they know.
Now they do.
Which park was that again? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Have to look it up in the book.
Flanders Nature Center.
Say that again?
Flanders Nature Center. Yes. I put 2 of the sites from my 20 wildflower hunt. I put 2 of them in the book, and that's what started Cruising Connecticut with a Picnic Basket.
So you have not just visiting the site and the adventure, but you also have the picnic part, or the eating part. What gave you the idea about that?
Well, I had collected by then every day tripping book ever written in Connecticut. And they were all wonderful, and I referred to them a lot during my travels. But I said I need my book to be set apart. I need it to be set apart from all the other books. So I thought, well, why don't I'd love to picnic, and what better thing to do when you're day tripping than stop for a picnic on the site.
So what type of person is a day tripper sort of thing?
Anybody who wants to get out and experience something other than what they have in their backyard. Someone who wants to get out and have an adventure. Mm-hmm. And
so you mentioned now adventure, and you consider yourself an adventurous type person.
I do.
So give us your definition of that.
Wow. Well, I can tell you that Webster's definition, the first definition under adventure, is a hazardous or unusual, not hazardous, hazardous, and I forgot what the second word was, but that reminded me of a book I had just read about a 18-year-old solo girl who had sailed around the world in a 26-foot sloop. Now, I have no idea what a 26-foot sloop looks like, but I thought, I don't care what she was sailing in. That's something I would never, ever do.
Well, I'm happy you brought that up because you went on an adventure, and then later on you talk about your adventure and how I won the West when you went out west on your own. And you mentioned the idea of adventure and danger. How do you think you prepared yourself for these type of adventures or dangers?
Well,
in the end, in the book, you didn't use the word danger. You used a different word. It wasn't danger, but it was...
fear, angst.
No,
I
there was
probably
another
used both
word.
of those words a few times in the
It was a
book.
little bit less than danger, but that's okay. You can go on.
You know, I think preparing myself went way back to when I first started traveling solo and taking big trips by myself. And I did have a lot of fear. I think, you know, everyone has a lot of fear, and you have to just learn, as I did, how to put it behind you. And I think that's easy to do when you have a passion, a strong passion. My passion has always been traveling. And so everything else has to get put behind my passion for traveling.
Your books actually have ideas about getting over the fears of traveling by being prepared. The reason I brought that topic up is because I told you one of the reasons why I invited you to the show is because I myself had traveled to 18 different countries and lived in another country. And one of the things that people did when they went to move to prepare themselves to live in another country is they read The Hobbit, which is about taking a journey, okay? So I was hoping maybe you'd say something like that. But that's how many people actually prepared themselves. They read books about journeys, and then they went and did it. So maybe when they want to do a cruise of Connecticut or a cruise of the West, they'll read your book and get a good idea about how to prepare. And preparation is really one of the, you know, you can never be totally prepared, but you have to have some preparation. If you're not prepared at all, your trip's going to be a disaster. So read a little bit from Cruising Connecticut. You're going to say about the, what was the name of that castle?
Yes, Gillette Castle.
Gillette Castle.
I suggested...
And that's funny because I just told you I was going to go to Gillette Castle when
Yes,
my
you
daughter comes
did.
to visit.
You did. So what a coincidence that I
works
wanted
out
to
well.
talk about Gillette Castle. Probably because Gillette Castle is probably one of my favorite picnicking destinations in the spring. And you know, spring has to get here eventually, right? And so I'm hoping everyone will take into consideration the pond before you get up to the castle itself. When you first turn onto the road leading to the castle, if you take, after a few yards, you take a left there. It's a dirt road. There's parking.
Well, first of all, you have to say what Gillette Castle is because this show is international, and not everybody knows what Gillette Castle is, even though it's a book about Connecticut.
That's a good point, Jason. Thank you. Okay, Gillette Castle State Park in East Haddam, Connecticut. I start out by saying from 1899 to 1929, Hartford native William Gillette brought Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's character of Sherlock Holmes, the master detective, straight from the pages of books and onto the Broadway stage. Both the actor and the character became famous, and one would argue somewhat synonymous.
So it's the home of one of the famous Shakespearean actors.
Absolutely, yes, and it's so interesting and dynamic because he was also a part-time inventor.
So his home had a lot of inventions in it.
A lot of adventures, which when you take the tour, it's awe-inspiring to see what he did in that house.
Something out of the Great Gatsby, actually, in the 20s and early 30s.
I guess you could say that.
It's the Connecticut Great Gatsby.
Yes.
So you always think about that when you see, a Hollywood-type home that is not in Hollywood, that started off in Connecticut, that they now have in Hollywood. But
and
this
there's
is in
a
the
beautiful
20s.
view. I should say that it
one of the best
overlooks
views.
the Connecticut River.
And you
it's
can
just
take
beautiful up there.
You can take a ferry to get there. It's
Yes,
very nice.
you can. Yes, yes.
So tell us, you said you wanted to talk about the picnic area there.
Well, the picnic area is the pond before you get up to the castle. There's also picnicking at the castle itself outside. In fact, his train used to be housed there, William Gillette's train, and that isn't there any longer, but they've made it into a little picnic area, which is nice. But the pond, in the summertime, is completely covered with water lilies, pink, fuchsia, and white water lilies, and it's just beautiful.
Somebody who likes, do they have artists there? Do you know, like in Weir Farm? Somebody wants to paint paintings of like Monet with the water lilies. I know some of these parks have artist areas, like Hillstead Museum has artist areas. And you see artists
nothing
there.
formal, but
Nothing formal.
I don't know why you don't see more artists setting up their easil there,
So you
because
hear that, everybody?
it's lovely.
If you want to paint some water lilies like Monet, go to Gillette Castle. So, how did the part about the actual recipes? Do you have recipes in your book? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, well, you know, when I decided to add picnicking areas to my day trips, I said, well, now that I have picnicking, I should go a step further and design recipes. So for every day trip, I have, you know, like I'm taking people along with me. What am I doing on this particular day trip? What am I doing on this destination? And then the next page is the picnicking. And sometimes there's more than one areas to picnic.
There's the water, whoops.
That's all right.
There's the water lilies.
Yes. And I actually, that frog that's on the water lily, that's real. I took that photograph.
Oh, you
He
took
was
the
jumping
photograph.
from one lily pad to the
wow.
other.
Looks professional. So, and do you have Sherlock Holmes Harkness Memorial? So, do you want to read one of your recipes, or this is tortellini salad? That's what
I'll
at Gillette
talk about
Castle.
the recipes because the recipes came from a variety of sources. They came from my old recipe files and my family's recipe files, because we always picnic. Even as a kid, I was picnicking with my folks. And they came from friends, and they came from volunteers who decided to make a recipe for a particular site.
These are good recipes. They're not just salami sandwiches.
Oh, no, they're wonderful. And then I have professional recipes from chefs in Connecticut. There's probably a dozen here who donated their recipes from their restaurants, and so that was a lot of fun, too. And I have to tell you, one time I prepared a gourmet picnic for Scott Haney and Kara Sutherland from Better Connecticut TV program. And I just loved it because I had the table all set, and my daughter was with me, and we were standing by the table waiting for the truck, and you see the big WFSB truck come up the hill and park. And it was several minutes before the doors opened, and all of a sudden the cameraman jumped out and he ran down the hill to where we were. He was a few feet away from us, and he pointed the camera up to the truck, and eventually Scott and Kara kind of meandered out of the truck, oblivious to us, okay? And they're meandering down the hill, and Scott's saying, "Oh, Kara, I had such a good time preparing this picnic for you." And she said, "Oh, Scott, that's really so nice of you." And then, of course, he was faced with the table by the time they got to us. And it was so much fun
Do you remember
picnicking with
what
them.
you were serving that day?
I don't remember. Probably my chicken dish. I have recipes in the back from everything you could want. And this was, I think, my entree. One of my favorites was chicken caprese.
Chicken caprese, okay.
And that came from a chef in Connecticut. And then all the sides and everything that went with it. So we had a good time. And they, after the show, after the cameraman put his camera away, then we just enjoyed ourselves.
Enjoyed the meal.
Yeah.
So tell us now about your latest book, How I Won the West. I like that one. And what your favorite story was in here. Maybe you can read us a little bit about it. Tell us a little bit how this came about. Read us a little piece from it. And why somebody should read that book.
Well, what I say on the back is Jan's dream was to take a 5-week road trip through the West. So she took a step beyond conventional thinking about older women traveling solo, beyond fear and other obstacles that threatened to interfere with her passion for adventure. What better way to discover the wonders of the West, the world, and herself? I think that traveling to the West had been on my travel list for many, many years. And when I felt the urge to take another road trip in 2009, this just popped into my head, and I said, that's it.
I'm going to tell you one thing. You took a plane to Denver,
Yes, I did.
and from there you rented a car.
Yes.
I was always thinking that when you take a trip to the West, you got to start in your car here and go there. And then I read that and I said, oh my God, I don't have to take my car from here. I can go there by plane,
You know,
rent it, and start. I didn't even think about that.
It's so interesting you should
Many
say that
people
because
start from here and
well,
they
I
take
was
a
going
cross-country
to.
tour.
I had every intention. In fact, I had my AAA map. The route was all prospective route because I changed it 4 times. It was all lined out in a blue marker. But one of my daughters noticed that the mark from Connecticut to Denver was straight and there were no stops along the way because I was really starting my first day trip, my first destination at Rocky Mountain National Park, which is about a couple of hours north of Denver. She says, Mom, why are you taking this tedious driving trip up and back? She said,
It's probably all
Fly?
flatlands in the middle of America,
yeah,
you know.
and I had seen much of that. So
That's a good idea. Take a plane to the West and then just
it was
do
so
the trip from
perfect.
there.
And then I had a good car for traveling all those mountains, which my car might not have made it. So it was
That was
perfect.
a rented car, you're saying?
It was a rented car.
A rented car,
yes,
sure.
yeah.
So tell us a little, read one chapter, or a part, not a chapter, but a
Well,
part.
probably I'll read a couple of paragraphs
Sure.
from my introduction because this will tell the viewer the kind of adventure I was looking for.
Sure, go ahead.
My adventures belong to the second definition in Webster's dictionary, which is an unusual and exciting experience. Nothing like the 26-foot
Not
slope.
the danger that
No.
I was talking
Oh,
about.
no,
So
no, no.
there you go. Unusual an unusual and
Exciting experience.
Exciting
And I would have to add new
Not
to
a
that
dangerous.
because most everything I did on this trip was new.
new.
Yeah.
Sure.
Initially, I focused on our national parks, Old Faithful and the wild animals roaming around Yellowstone, the thrill of standing at the base of Mount Rushmore and looking up at the stone-faced president seen only in pictures. 8 more national parks and monuments were chosen. That was just the beginning. There was so much more I needed to connect with, like the wild part of the Old West, or what was left of it, and the first time scared to think about drive to mountaintops. But like John Muir said, the mountains are calling and I must go. I wondered what it would feel like for a grandmother to stay in youth hostels, to ride a horse over terrain that I had seen in hundreds of Western movies, and to hop on a train that hugged the side of the mountain as it climbed high above the canyon. I longed to stay in small, out-of-the-way towns and meet locals, to hear a new dialect and view the world from a different perspective. And I did all that, all those things. It was a phenomenal
Fantastic.
trip.
So read a little bit about the trip itself. Can you read an example?
Well, I can tell you that I went to 10 national parks and monuments. I have getting ready. You talk about being organized. I'm a super organized person, and I had, in fact, all my reservations for 35
We
nights.
actually talked about how to pack in there, so you had
Oh
to be super
yeah,
organized.
how to pack, to live comfortably in a car for 6 weeks because I put 6,500 miles on.
So mention some of the ideas that people who would read the book they would get from this type of book. It's not just about the travel to the site, but how to do a day trip type traveling.
Exactly.
So what are some of the
for
topics
instance,
we
I went on the cheap. I was on a budget.
So how to budget
So
yourself.
one of my chapters is financing and other tedious topics. The tedious topics comes in because I don't like thinking about finances.
Well, that was sort of like, in Europe, how to do Paris and a $1 a day, remember those books? Okay.
Exactly. And I want to tell you that I surprised myself because I didn't keep track as I went along. Excuse me. But I was very proud that when I got home and figured everything out, that I did it for just under $100 a day. Now that's for the 3 main expenses, which are lodging, food, and gas.
You have to realize that even when you're living at home, you have a certain expense per day.
Exactly.
So it's not exactly that much more. You're just spending it
Exactly.
there instead of here.
Yes. And one of the things that went along with traveling on the cheap was to eat my breakfasts and lunches out of my cooler and grocery bag in the car. The only meal I had out was dinner, and that was because I stopped in a new town every night, and I'd check into the lodging, and I would go out and walk and get some exercise and find a nice restaurant.
I think that's a good idea, because a lot of restaurants who are catering to tourists, the dinner is better than the lunch or the breakfast.
Yes.
It's a better meal.
Yes,
They're prepared for that.
It is, exactly. So in respect to that, I have another chapter, eating healthy, sort of, and cheap, kind of, while traveling. And I tell them how I did it.
People want to hear about the adventure, so let's hear about the adventure.
The adventures.
Read a part.
Well, one of the national parks, or should I talk about my chapter on fear?
No, one of the national parks.
One of the national parks. Okay, let me read Up Close and Personal in Yellowstone.
Okay.
I'll read some of it.
And by the time they got to Yellowstone, they already got over their fear of traveling.
I would think so, yeah. The subtitle is Opera for Bears. The body swaggered from side to side, although the eyes and slightly bent head were fixated straight ahead. He seemed intent on walking the white line, like an intoxicated driver under police officers' scrutiny. Tourists watched from cars lined up on either side of the road, and I assumed that they were just as mesmerized as I was, until a motorist down the lane honked his horn. The bison, not missing a beat, continued to plod along with a devil-may-care attitude. Minutes later, when he was parallel to my car, his face revealed what he may have been thinking. Hey, this is my park, so deal with it. Right on, I said to the massive beast weighing close to a ton. I saw another bison later in the day, and I was the first car, and I saw him in my rearview mirror. So I stopped because he was, again, meandering down the middle of the road. And I talk about how I got out of my car, and I was just watching him, entranced, and I had my camera, and I was clicking. And then all of a sudden, he goes from the straight line down the middle of the road towards me.
I hopped in my car outside?
No, outside, so I hopped in pretty fast.
Well, animals aren't predictable. You know, the number one YouTube video right now is that somebody went to a park where there was lions, and the lion actually opened up the door with his mouth.
What? Say that again?
The lion opened up the handle.
The car door?
Yeah, I pulled on the handle and opened it.
Oh my gosh.
And the people were filming, and suddenly they got the lion in the car. So you never know.
That's incredible.
You talk about bears. I saw a video from Smoky Mountain Park where somebody left their car in the parking lot, and they left a wedding cake in the car. So the bear actually tore apart the door, and everyone's filming it and watching it, gets into the car and starts eating the wedding cake. So you gotta watch out.
Where there's food involved, they do have a way.
Don't feed the bears.
I tell about a friend in this chapter who, she was very young. I think she was like 18 or 19. And she got woken up in the middle of the night by someone yelling and screaming. And she didn't find out till the next day that there was a man on top of a picnic table protecting his picnic basket. So I say in my book, I wonder, I would protect my picnic basket from rain or from kids who are snatching cookies or something. But what would a man have there that was so valuable he needed to protect it from the bear? He got mauled pretty badly.
Yeah. That would happen.
And the way the opera for bears came in is that I received a newspaper when I went through the gates at Yellowstone, and they, of course, so many articles talking about how to protect yourself and your food from bears. And the article said, and you can sing to them. So I had a good time
You actually sang to the bears?
No, I never found one, but I was prepared in case I did.
Oh, did you sing to the bison?
No, the bison was before the bears.
And now that we talked about bears, I see you have a little cuddly bear on the right over there. What is that?
This is Teddy Tripper.
Teddy Tripper.
This was my companion.
And
I had two
Tripper?
The name Tripper, well, Teddy obviously, but the name Tripper was for two parts. I loved Three's Company, and Jack Tripper was one of my favorite comedians. But also, I'm a day tripper, so...
Teddy Tripper.
There you go, Teddy Tripper, it made sense. But, I wanted to travel the world, or the country rather, like John Steinbeck in Travels with Charlie,
Right, I
in
saw
Search of
that.
American.
Yes, very good.
And he talked about Charlie being a good protector and a good, maybe break the ice with people so he could meet people along the way because he was a wonderful dog, I guess. He was born in France and he was very unique, and people would always ask, what breed of dog is that? And so then I argued in my first chapter, Steinbeck and Me, I talk about the similarities between Steinbeck, not many between he and I, except that we were both born with an incurable wanderlust. But I talk about a couple of the similarities of our trips, but also the great many differences. And
Listen, I really like that idea that you first read the Steinbeck books and then you had comparisons between your trip and what
Yes.
Steinbeck did. That was quite good.
Yes, thank you. And so I countered and I answered John Steinbeck in the chapter, and I said, Charlie might have been a good icebreaker. I said, but actually Teddy Tripper did just as well, especially when I asked people to photograph us in front of a notable mountain. And he also said that Charlie was a good protector. And I said, well, I didn't expect Teddy Tripper to protect me. I said, but I brought along a canister of pepper spray for that part. So my two companions, Teddy Tripper and pepper spray, got me through the trip.
And
just
you didn't
great.
have to use the pepper spray, you said.
I did not have to use it. I had it in my hand a couple of times.
Sure.
Yeah.
But, so what would you say, we're closing to the end of the show, what would you say was your most interesting adventure in the trip out west?
That's a hard question, Jason, because
Why?
I went to 10 national parks and monuments, and there's no comparison between any of them. None of them even resemble another one. So, which means is that every park I entered, I found something unique and distinct
That's beautiful.
and beautiful about them.
That's
And
what's
so
great about
there's no comparison.
Our country is that we do have so much diversity and so much difference
yes.
between the parks. It's not all the same thing.
That's the beauty of this country, yes. And I wished I hadn't waited so long to go out west, because then I would have gone out again to see what I didn't see, or spend more time in places. It was a wonderful trip.
Did you ride a horse?
I did. Oh,
Okay.
yes, I did, absolutely. I rode a horse in the Wild West country, and that was fabulous. I did everything that I had set my mind to, and still stayed on my budget.
And you still stayed in your budget?
Yeah.
What else would you like to tell us about your book? The red nose at the back of the book? Want to show that?
Yes,
Show
actually.
everybody what you have.
Yes, when people see
a
my
picture.
book, I don't know if they can see the red nose, but when people look at my book,
can
they
zoom
say,
in.
why is there a picture of you wearing a red nose?
Yeah, why? Why is
And-
there a picture of you with red
Well,
nose?
I met a man in Portland, Oregon, in the park, Washington Park, and he had a red nose on. And I said, excuse me, I had just had to find out why he was wearing a red nose. And he said, well, it's my day off, and a red nose reminds me that it's my day to have fun.
Oh.
But right after he told me that, he turned back to his partner, who was on the swing next to him, and they started a very serious conversation. So I thought about this through the park, through
They
my
wanted
walk.
a pink nose.
What's that?
They wanted a pink nose.
And I said, well, if I was on a swing wearing a red nose, I would be having fun, like right now.
Cool.
I'm having fun,
Yes, you are. Isn't that great?
And that's what people need to remember, that red nose, whether you're on a swing or not, should be all about having fun.
So not to have fear, you started off with having fear, and we're ending the show, and you ended it with having fun.
Absolutely.
So that would be your message. Go out there and have fun and see the world.
Absolutely.
Okay,
See
Sarah,
the
Sarah.
world, yes.
Well, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having
Another
me.
successful Meet the Author episode.